Hello, my name is Michael Lambert. Now, today I thought I'd talk a little bit about Brexit, a kind of an update really, and just see how things are going, see if we can spot some of the advantages. I'm going to do this based on a number of stories, quite a surprising number of stories that have appeared in the media in the last week concerning various aspects of Brexit. I think there's a general sense, it seems to me, of people wanting to move on now. That it's Brexit. Let's stop talking about it. Let's just get on and make the best of our situation. And whilst I can understand that attitude, I think it's probably not going to get us very far. It's a little bit like standing on the deck of a sinking ship and saying, let's move on. There are too many problems, and I think these stories kind of illustrate some of the problems that we're facing. The first story was a report on the BBC, and it was in most of the press, and it was concerning a report produced by the Aston University Business School, which is a very prestigious business school. And they said, and I'm quoting, "Brexit red tape on British businesses has caused goods trade between the UK and the EU to slump, and the problem is getting worse. Many smaller UK producers have given up exporting to the EU after facing more rules and regulations. Between 2021 and 2023, the study calculated that UK goods exports to the EU were down 27% and imported goods were down 32%, below where they would have been had Brexit not happened." And I wanted to just repeat an analogy which I've used a long time ago about really how our situation changed. And if you imagine all the supermarkets in the UK, and everybody goes to a supermarket each week and so on, and they're all trading well and making money and so on. And if suddenly one of the supermarkets had said, look, we've got a new system in now, and in future when you get to the till you pay for all your goods, but you won't be able to take them away before. You'll then have to fill out forms, and you'll have to maybe pay some duty on some of the goods and possibly some VAT and so on, and you'll probably need an agent for that, and because of all these new rules and regulations we had to put all the prices up because it costs us more. And you won't necessarily be able to take your goods right away. You might have to wait for 2 or 3 days before the paperwork is all dealt with. Well, in those circumstances, that would have been the end of that supermarket. And that is exactly what Brexit did. It imposed controls on imports and exports, which do not apply to anywhere else within the EU. And of course, any EU buyer or seller is going to avoid the UK like the plague, if at all possible. Because why would you want all that extra bureaucracy, which is exactly what Brexit has created? Now, I know that people will say we're the fastest growing economy in the G7 and the fastest this and the fourth biggest exporter in the world, and everything's fantastic, and that things are worse in the EU and Germany's collapsing and da-da-da-da-da. But just look around. We can all see, the general sense in this country, I think, of just doom and gloom, not least because of what Starmer and Reeves have said about how the budget's going to be difficult. But there's just a general feeling of pessimism, I think, and Brexit is the back of all of it. Now, The Guardian reported the other day, they said that UK's post-Brexit checks on fruit and vegetables brought into Britain from the EU have been delayed for the third time, amid concerns from suppliers that they could lead to higher prices for shoppers. And there you are again, you see, we are now behind these barriers, and we're supposed to control goods. We take back control what's coming into the country, but it's just can't get round to it. And besides which, if we do that, it's going to put the prices up, and so best not to. And so look at the number of times the Tories put off imposing import controls, and it's happening again now, it seems, because they're worried about prices. Well, of course prices are going to go up if we're going to bring in all these controls. There was an article in Farming UK this week saying the government has been urged to negotiate a new deal with the EU as post-Brexit veterinary failures are costing the industry millions of pounds a year. Inconsistency and inaccuracy in veterinary controls are crippling the UK meat industry. The Association of Independent Meat Suppliers has warned. And they said that the situation is untenable with an increasing, unmanageable burden of bureaucracy. I know that Keir Starmer said he's going to sweep away all these veterinary controls, but he may or may not. The EU may not be that keen to help with that, given that we're not fulfilling our agreements with regarding the Windsor framework. But I'll mention about that in a moment. In The Guardian, now you know that one of the things about leaving the EU is that we're free to do whatever we like, really. Now we're just no longer bossed around by civil servants in Brussels. And two of the advantages are that the water companies, all foreign, mostly foreign owned, are now free to, as we know, and the whole world knows, free to throw sewage in the rivers and the seas because it's much more profitable, much better for them. They're all taking terrific dividends and so on. And another benefit is that rules about pesticides have been very much relaxed. And this is what The Guardian said. The amount of pesticide residue allowed on scores of food types in England, Wales and Scotland has soared since Brexit, analysis reveals, with now some thousands of times higher. Changes to regulations in Great Britain mean that more than 100 items are now allowed to carry more pesticides when sold to the public, ranging from potatoes to onions, grapes to avocados to coffee and to rice. And the maximum residue levels have been weakened for 49 different pesticides, 15 of which are on the list of highly hazardous pesticides. So people sending us goods where we buy food from all over the world, because we're going to have to source in other countries, are going to be able to grow their food with all sorts of pesticides. I think one of these that we've relaxed, which are using in this country now, is one that kills bees. But bees, they only sting you, don't they? Who needs bees? But this obviously has an effect upon insect life in this country, and it will mean that the quality of the food that we're importing is not going to be as it was before, because the controls are so much relaxed. It seems almost beyond belief, really, but there you go. Another report in The Guardian said government plans to force food manufacturers to put not for EU labels on all meat and dairy products sold across Britain next month have been indefinitely postponed after warnings that the scheme could cause chaos for producers and suppliers. The Food and Drink Federation had estimated the cost to the industry, that's to us actually, of meeting the new labelling requirements. It would be up to £250 million a year, and warned it would increase the price of products to shoppers. You know, the deal we did with this Windsor framework was so that goods could go to Northern Ireland, and then because they were going to have to be stamped not for the EU, they wouldn't be able to go across the border. But of course, we're now unilaterally suspending that idea, and so the border, the Northern Ireland border, will be we open to smugglers, presumably indefinitely. And at the same time, we're going back to the EU asking for a reset. I mean, this is from the Daily Mail. Migrant butchers are set to be paid more than British abattoir workers due to new immigration rules and post-Brexit labour shortages. Again, you know, we've managed to deter Europeans from coming and working here. We started bringing all these people in, as I've talked about before, from India and from particularly from Nigeria and from Pakistan and Bangladesh and so on. And then we found they were bringing their families. We couldn't have that, and everybody got excited about how many people were coming. And so we've now limited it, and we've introduced a very high minimum wage that you have to earn before you can, or you have to get a job earning a minimum wage of, I think it's 37,000 now, before you can come here. So we're going to end up now with migrant workers getting paid more than British workers for doing the same job. It's as I said the week before last, I think, we're keeping all the low-paid jobs for ourselves and going to get foreigners to do the better-paid jobs. CNN, they produced a programme last week saying Britain's local governments are at serious risk of widespread collapse. Sky News. According to Cambridge Econometrics, using OBR, that's Office of Budget Responsibility data, Brexit has cost the UK 140 billion so far, according to new analysis, and could see the nation £311 billion worse off by the middle of the next decade. The headline findings from the report include lower growth, lower employment, strong negative impacts on investment, imports falling more than exports, and a growing gap between London and the rest of the UK. I can tell you about London actually, because I sometimes go to central London to look at the rich people. There is so much money in central London; it is unbelievable. You're just falling over Ferraris and Maseratis and Rolls Royces and Bentleys and Lamborghinis, and all these extremely expensive shops and extremely expensive restaurants. It's just full of foreigners who are just very, very rich, having a very, very good time. Foreigners and people who've managed to benefit from Brexit, because presumably they've got money in tax havens and so on. And it's two countries really. I think someone described the UK now as a very poor country with some very rich people. This is from the Times. Commission on the Future of Employment Support. UK's workforce is shrinking at the fastest rate in 4 decades, costing the economy $25 billion a year and adding $60 billion of fiscal pressure to the public finances. According to a study of Britain's missing worker problem, 800,000 people have fallen out of the labour market since COVID-19 and Brexit, the largest employment drop since the 1980s. And we all know this is partly to do with the fact there are 7 million people waiting to go into hospital, and a lot of these who are not working will be those people. We know that a lot of people just don't want to work. And we know also that we're an ageing population, because more and more people are retiring, and fewer and fewer people are joining the workforce. But we don't want immigrants, because that would be a way of solving the shortage of workers. But no, we don't want immigrants. We want to keep them out at all costs. UK tourism was down 2.8 billion this year, 3 million fewer visitors. It's partly because they now have to have passports to come here. And apparently until now, school children were able to come with ID cards still, and they will be until April next year, after which even children's school trips will have to have passports. So that'll put an end to that. And so it goes on, and the response of the government to all this negative news, there's an awful lot of negative news for one week. The response of the government is that we're going for growth. And I know I've mentioned this before, I find it just so exasperating. You can spend 30 years building a business and you can lose it overnight with something like Brexit. But when you start a business, it's not easy. It takes an awful lot of time, and as I said many times before, every big business in the world began as a startup. It began with 1 or 2 people sat around a kitchen table or working in their garage on a workbench or something, with an idea that they wanted to see if it would work, or maybe opening a little cafe somewhere and turning it into a chain. But it takes a long time. If you start a business now, you'd be lucky to make any profit for several years. And the number of businesses that actually become very successful are very, very, very few. And so whilst you can just say, we've got our business manager, Jonathan Reynolds, now the Minister for Business, and he's talking about just go for growth. The whole government's going for growth. And you can see it, that the whole government is actually depending on growth. And I just don't think they understand how difficult it is going to be to grow an economy from the state that we're in, when you know that there are tens of thousands of businesses on the verge of bankruptcy. And when you know how difficult it is to start a business, and frankly, anybody starting a business now would have to be out of their minds in such a depressed economy. And so it's going to be very, very difficult. If you're going to go for growth, you need to start teaching children in school from quite an early age a little bit about business, and trying to get them interested so that when they leave school or whatever, they might go to university or some business school or something and learn about a business and then have a go at setting up a business. But just to say go for growth, I don't want to keep harping on about my example, but I took 20 years to build up a business with 300 customers in Europe. Well, I lost that overnight. Now, if I was to try and start all over again, you couldn't. But I mean, if Brexit hadn't happened, you would start again. I mean, it's going to take years and years and years and years. You can't just go for growth. I know they're talking about all these sort of green ideas and AI and all the rest of it. The whole world's talking about the same things. We've got an awful lot of competition in the world. We're not really starting from a very strong position. And so I'm sorry to say, I just think, the response is always, of course, this is what the Brexit, which has caused all these problems. This is what the British people voted for. This is what the British people wanted, and we've been told time and time again, the British people knew exactly what would happen and what they were voting for. And when you look at the cost of Brexit so far and the total absence of any benefits whatsoever, it's very difficult to see any way that we can even begin to recover without some involvement in the EU. And I know that's going to be, as people are going to be pointing out in the comments, I know it's going to be extremely difficult. It's going to take possibly years and years and years, but at least we must head in that direction instead of all the time saying it's never ever going to happen. We're just going to solve all our problems by growth. It's pie in the sky. It's nonsense, and there's a lot of pain ahead. And we've already been warned that the budget next month is going to be pretty difficult, but I think there's going to be years and years and years of continual decline, because I just don't see how you turn it around from our present position. Anyway, I'm sorry again to be so negative and so depressing, but I mean, it's the reality. It's no good pretending otherwise. It's no good being all chirpy and we're going to do this, we're going to do that and do the other, if you don't know how you're going to do it. But anyway, that's what I think. If you've watched this far, thank you very much indeed, and until next time, bye for now.